Today's episode is supported by Chainalysis, the blockchain data platform transforming the way financial institutions, government, and crypto businesses trace digital assets. With advanced tools for compliance and investigations, Chainalysis helps you stay ahead in the fight against financial crime. Designated is proudly supported by Hummingbird. Hummingbird is a modern compliance platform designed to make financial crime investigations smarter, faster, and more effective. Because today's financial criminals are sophisticated, savvy, and agile, meaning the tools used to fight them should be too. Learn more at hummingbird.co.
I am having this constant fear of losing Tigran. Tigran is innocent. He didn't do anything wrong, and he's suffering, and he needs to come home. And this could happen to anyone, not just Tigran. So I think that we should take a stand so this would not happen to anybody else. I don't want anyone to experience what I'm going through right now.
I'm Yaya Jata Fanusie, and this is the first episode of Designated from the Illicit Edge Network, where we shine a light on the financial crime fighters and economic warriors out there and learn how these professionals follow the money and figure out which illicit financing threats are on the horizon. Most of these professionals do their honorable work outside the limelight, and you never know their names until something goes wrong. Which brings me to Tigran Gambaryan. Simply put, Tigran Gambaryan is an American hero, but right now he's languishing inside a Nigerian prison, unjustly. He's been locked up for over 7 months, over 200 days, for seemingly no reason at all. The world needs to know his story. Earlier in his career, Tigran spent years as a special agent with the Internal Revenue Service's Criminal Investigations Division. The IRS CI, as it's called, is one of the world's top law enforcement financial forensics units. While there, Tigran was a pioneer in the US government's efforts to catch cybercriminals worldwide, especially important during the early days of the illicit use of cryptocurrencies. For example, Tigran helped to uncover the corrupt dealings of other law enforcement officers who were stealing crypto during an investigation. He helped track down millions of dollars worth of crypto from a hacked exchange, and he helped to shut down the biggest online child sexual exploitation network, all by using sophisticated techniques of cryptocurrency tracing and blockchain analysis. In fact, he was so good at his job that he was recruited by the biggest crypto exchange in the world, Binance, to help clean up their act. At the time, Binance was under heavy scrutiny by regulators for violating anti money laundering laws. Wanting to correct its past, Binance searched for the best and brightest law enforcement officers out there to help with their compliance issues. Tigran soon left public service and applied his expertise at Binance and would soon become their head of financial crime compliance. Well, in late February of this year, after meeting with officials in Nigeria about Binance's status in the country, he and a colleague had their passports taken and were detained. The colleague escaped, but Tigran was sent to one of Nigeria's most dangerous prisons. So, how did this decorated American crime fighter get ensnared in an international incident where truth and justice seem obstructed by corruption and greed? We may not be able to talk to Tigran directly, but we will do our best to share his story with you. Over the course of this two-part debut, you'll hear from Tigran's friends and former colleagues. You'll hear from a U.S. congressman, and I'll also speak with a top executive at Binance, all fighting for his release and safe passage home. But most importantly, I want you all to hear from Tigran's family and understand his story from those closest to him. So, time to get designated and hear the behind the scenes story so we can figure out what needs to happen to bring Tigran home. Yuki Gambaryan is Tigran's wife of 15 years. They have two young children, and all she wants is to have her husband return home. Courageously, she spoke with me about living in this never ending nightmare and what she faces day to day. The pain is real, the toll on her is great, and you can hear it in every word. I'm wondering if we could maybe just start with just how you're doing. How are you managing in the midst of all of this?
To be completely honest with you, I'm not doing well mentally or physically. Um, Having to manage everything all by myself has been very challenging, on top of worrying about my husband's, Tigran's health and well being. So, yeah, I wish I could say I'm okay, but no, not really. I'm not really okay.
How has it been affecting you in terms of at home? What tell us a little bit more about what you're managing?
Well, first of all, I am having this constant fear of losing Tigran. I am constantly worried about, what if he gets another malaria and die, or he's having his herniated disc, and if he gets blood clots from it, that could kill him. What if that's going to happen? Or what if something dangerous happens in the prison? Sometimes I just feel like I would just never see him again. And those thoughts are invasive and very crippling. And it makes it hard for me to just go about my day. But I have to be functional because I have two young children. I have to make sure that they're happy and healthy. I have to make sure they're not behind on any schoolworks or anything like that. And I have to keep the household running. I I just have to maintain the house. And at the same time, I try to engage in media effort such as this as much as possible. So managing all those things while being under an extreme stress is very challenging.
I can imagine. What are the children saying about this situation?
So it's getting harder and harder to keep things from my 10-year-old because she just keeps coming to me asking questions such as um, why why is dad still there, what's happening? And I tell her his the company he works for is in some sort of legal trouble and he's there to help resolve the issue. And she says, okay. And then she comes back to me a few days later and she asks me, so what exactly is he doing to help resolve the situation? And I honestly don't know how to answer those questions. So that's how my daughter is handling the situation. And my 5 year old is pretty much oblivious, but he does tell me over and over that he misses his father and he wants him to come home. The other day, I took them to a nearby park, and my son saw an airplane in the sky, and he said, "Mommy, look, there's an airplane. Is Daddy on that airplane?"
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there are moments like that.
Where are you getting the support to help you through this?
Well, physically, I'm getting a lot of help from my sister. She lives nearby, so she's been a big help. When I had to go to DC, she was the one who took care of my children. And I'm getting a lot of emotional support from Tigran's friends, coworkers. Um, they have been very supportive. So yeah, emotionally, I'm getting a lot of support, and I'm very grateful for that.
Hmm. Can you share with us a little bit more about what Tigran is like as a man, as a family man?
He's a very loving father. He's just naturally a loving person. He he shows his affections very effortlessly, and that's something I cannot do. So he's the more loving and affectionate parent in this household. As a person, he's very giving. He gets joy out of doing things for others without expecting anything in return. He's also very loyal to people who he cares about. Um, yeah, that's kind of person.
If you don't mind me asking, how did you all actually meet?
Well, I met him in San Francisco while I was on a family vacation. We just started talking and we just hit it off. So after that, we had a long distance relationship for about an year and a half because back then I was still in Tokyo finishing up college and he was working in Sacramento. And then after I graduated, Tigran got me a fiance visa and I moved to the States and we got married. And that was 15 years ago.
Wow. Wow. Can you tell us about the moment when you found out something was wrong with Tigran in Nigeria? What happened?
Right. So he left on February 24th. And then the next day when he got to Abuja, he messaged me saying that, hey, I just checked into my hotel, everything is fine. I'm wearing the t-shirt that you gave me for Valentine's Day. It's really nice. I like it. Thank you. All
Hmm.
right, I'll keep you posted. And after that message, I did not hear from him for more than 24 hours. So during that time, I was increasingly getting worried. And then around 8 p.m. on February 26th, I was getting my kids ready for the bed, and I got a call from our family friend who happens to be another Binance employee.
Hmm.
And that's after not hearing from him for more than 24 hours. So the moment I saw my friend's name on my phone, I just knew that something happened, something bad happened. And I picked up the phone and he said, Yuki, don't freak out, but it seems like Tigran has been detained. And that's how I learned this whole thing.
And where did you get information about exactly what happened? Were you able to hear from someone officially? How did you know what was going on?
Well, I got a call from the US Embassy in Abuja the next day, but at that time they could not give me any details because they didn't have any details. They just told me that Tigran was detained. And for the first 5 days or so, Tigran was not allowed to communicate with anyone. No lawyers, no embassy staffs, no family, no friends, nothing. So I knew little to nothing about where exactly he was being kept or how exactly he was being treated.
Hmm.
So those initial few days were definitely scary.
Was there any thought before he left that something like this could happen or something unexpected could be possible with this trip to Nigeria?
Well, he had a trip to Nigeria in early January, and I believe it's a public knowledge at this point, but he almost got detained. So this was his second time going there. So of course I had some concern about his safety, but he went there because he had assurance from the Nigerian government that nothing like this would happen and he would have nothing to worry about. So, yeah, when this actually happened, I was in shock. He was in shock, I
Hmm.
believe.
That first time when he almost got detained, or what was it that happened?
He and his team attended some meetings and it went hostile, and and they basically told him that they would confiscate their passports.
Hmm.
So Tigran and his team just immediately got out of the country. So it was a close call, but
Mhm.
they managed to get out before that actually happened.
And on the second trip, you said that he had assurances. Was he specifically told things would be okay?
That is my understanding, yes.
You touched on his medical issues. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's most concerning about his health condition?
So there are two health issues he's suffering from right now. One is his herniated disc. It flared up during this imprisonment, and it's getting worse and worse by the day. He is in severe pain 24/7. He cannot walk. He cannot sleep because it hurts so much. He was even receiving blood thinners to prevent blood clots because he's completely bedbound. But the prison stopped giving him the blood thinners for whatever reason. Um, and he's not receiving any treatment for his back issue, so it's likely to cause further complications and possibly affect his mobility permanently. And the other health issues is this repeated respiratory infection. He's constantly getting infections that now he needs to get his tonsils removed.
Mm.
But I don't know where or how this procedure can be done because the prison is not equipped to provide a procedure like this, I think.
So, has he seen an actual doctor?
He has seen a doctor at a private hospital when he had malaria and pneumonia. And then he also saw another doctor for his back. And then last week he saw a pulmonologist because he got another chest infection just last week. So he does see doctors here and there, but we need to fight for that because they don't let that happen easily.
What has the US government done to intervene that you know of?
My state representative, Congressman McCormick, he's been very supportive, and I am just fortunate to be represented by someone like him. And we've also reached out to some senators and their staffers, and they have been very responsive, and I'm grateful for that. And I also know that multiple government officials have been reaching out directly to the Nigerian authorities to
Mm.
raise this issue and then ask for his immediate release.
Do you have any interaction with the Nigerian government at all, or is it just through US government officials?
Just through a US government official. I have zero direct interactions with the Nigerian counterparts.
Hmm. Um, is there, what about the legal representation? Is he able to consult with a lawyer there?
Yes, he has lawyers on the ground, but for a while, the prison headquarters put a ban on a lawyer visit. So Tigran was not allowed to have any legal counsel. The ban seems to have been lifted very recently, but we'll see how it goes from here on.
So we're recording this September 24th.
Mhm.
What's next in his case or his situation that you're looking towards?
Um, that is a tough question to answer because I do not really know how these issues are usually handled. But one thing I would like to um, see happen very soon is the State Department declaring Tigran formally as wrongfully detained. That
Mm.
is one thing specific that I look forward to.
Mm. One question I have is if you can share is how you're able to get direct updates or communicate. Can you share how does that happen?
So I am in direct contact with the State Department. I have my point of contact, and also I have my personal lawyers. So they are in regular contact with a various government officials and agencies. Um, that's how I mostly get any updates and progress.
What out of this situation, if anything, um, gives you hope?
My only hope at this point is the help I can get from the US government. They really are my only hope to get Tigran back. I truly believe that the US government deeply care about all the US citizens who are detained abroad, and I believe they have the ability, power, and leverages to resolve these kind of issues. So that gives me a slight hope, but I gotta say, it's getting harder and harder to stay hopeful.
Well, we're hoping that with this program, we can bring more awareness and put more pressure um, here in the US and overseas. If there's something that you could say to the Nigerian government, what would you like to say?
I'm not sure, but I do wonder if they understand how much pain and suffering they're causing. I wonder um, if they know how many people's lives are getting affected by their actions. I do wonder if they even care about those things. Um, I understand that they're having issues with Binance, and I believe they can they can try to resolve those issues however they want, but they do not need Tigran being held against his will to do that. They don't need Tigran there. They can pursue any legal actions, whatever, to solve this issue they're having with Binance, but they just don't need Tigran there. I just want them to drop the charges against him, and I just want them to just let him come home to us right now.
Many in the crypto community, many in the law enforcement industry are rallying, behind Tigran. What would you like to say to the crypto community, the law enforcement community about Tigran?
Well, I want them to keep sharing the story, and I don't want them to forget that Tigran is innocent. He didn't do anything wrong, and he's suffering, and he needs to come home. I want them to urge the US government to take more decisive actions. I want them to raise their voices and let the world know that what Tigran is going through every day is a complete disregard for justice and humanity, and this should not be tolerated.
I agree, Yuki, and my thoughts and prayers are with you and the family throughout all of this, and we're hoping what we can do to bring Tigran home. Is there anything else that you would like to share or say to the audience watching and listening to this?
And this could happen to anyone, not just Tigran. So I think we should um, we should take a stand so this would not happen to anybody else. I don't want anyone to experience what I'm going through right now.
Thankfully, Yuki has the support of many. And she mentioned the efforts of Republican Congressman Rich McCormick, who represents the 6th District of Georgia, where Tigran and his family live. He's been at the forefront of the fight for Tigran's freedom on Capitol Hill and has been working across party lines and has garnered bipartisan support in the effort to bring Tigran home. Could you tell us, how did you first hear about Tigran Gambaryan?
So some constituents reached out that knew him. He lives in my district. Brought it to my attention that somebody had been basically kidnapped by the Nigerian government, is the way they put it, and that he's being wrongfully detained. I was actually at first skeptical because sometimes people claim things that aren't true, or it's a reach. And I figured it was going to be one of those things that's going to clear up in the legal system, and we stand by and keep an eye on it. But then the more we looked into it, the more I realized how egregious the conditions really were and how unfair the situation had developed.
Congressman McCormick, we actually talked to his wife, Yuki, and she did say that you spoke with her. What have you told Yuki?
I told her that we're trying our best to get him out, that we're putting all the leverage we can on their government, both directly and indirectly, reaching out to the State Department to have his case elevated to the highest levels.
Great. I know that she was very thankful of your support. Can you tell us about the committee resolution that was recently passed?
Sure. Well, first of all, just I want to give credit where credit's due. Representative French Hill has visited him in Africa. Also, Brian Fitzpatrick also visited him in there in Africa. Brian's part of the Intel Committee. French Hill is part of the Foreign Affairs Committee with me, and they both take special interest. We brought before the committee that the State Department elevates this to the highest level, gives them special protection, special rights. It also encourages the Nigerian government to basically hand him over to the consul to allow him unfettered access to medical care as well as lawyers. He's not even being treated as well as an average person who would be arrested in Nigeria for whatever. And I really do think that this is an obvious case of holding somebody hostage to punish a business that they have a problem with. That's fine if you have a problem with the business, but don't take random people hostage in order to deal with that. That's just not the way any country should ever act.
So, who here needs to step up? Who are you calling to act?
Well, the State Department, first of all, needs to be a lot more strong. They need to approach Nigeria with strength, not just passiveness. If it was their relatives, I guarantee you this would be a whole different situation. But what I've noticed, and I'm not trying to play politics here, but we've come at this kind of soft sell when it comes to negotiations. We paid billions of dollars to get a basketball player back in America, to get somebody who was accused I think they tried to make it fair by bringing somebody back who had been accused of espionage by paying billions of dollars for that person too. It's all well and good, but it sets a precedence where countries now expect to be paid for people they take. So, of course, wouldn't that encourage that same behavior? America has a tremendous amount of leverage over other countries. We have the largest GDP in the world. We are the largest economy. We drive the currency. We are the largest military players in the world. All cards should be on the table. We should be putting enormous leverage against Nigeria until they release him, or at least turn him over to the consul to be treated fairly, that he get a expedient case with a legitimate charge. He's just being treated absolutely horribly, and he is an American citizen, and that should be taken very seriously by our government. And Nigeria needs to step up to the plate. When I talked to their ambassador, when I talked to their representatives, I was very strict and stern on this, and said, look, you guys are taking a huge chance in ruining your great relationship with the United States by the way you're treating one of our citizens unfairly.
Have you heard anything from Anthony Blinken?
No, he hasn't come to the table for this or for his answer to Afghanistan. So he's avoiding us right now. I think he thinks it's partisan. I disagree. This case specifically is definitely not partisan. It's great bipartisan support. It was pretty much unanimously passed into the bill, and it has great participation by both Democrats and Republicans.
And we know that in addition to serving the 6th District, you're also a licensed emergency room physician. What are your specific concerns about Tigran's health?
Well, he's got malaria. He's dehydrated. He's got uh, degenerative disc disease in his back. He's got significant pain. I don't know if they don't have the ability to treat him or they just don't wish to. But he's having a hard time sleeping, walking, just being healthy in general. Malaria is a horrible disease. Not to mention the depression, anxiety of being separated from your family unjustly. just that's going to play on you too, and your ability to heal when you're not getting the right nutrition, the right sleep, the right surroundings. You feel like you've basically been picked on for no reason. I mean, it's really a horrible scenario for him. It's a tale as old as time. One of the oldest books in the Bible talks about a gentleman who felt persecuted by God because everything was going wrong, and that's kind of where he's at right now.
That's a really compelling thought to think about. We know, as we've talked to people, we've heard that he's persevering, but that his situation is very bleak. Obviously, as a public servant, you're a public servant, and Tigran was once a public servant. He dedicated so much of his career to doing good. How should folks in the public sector see this situation? This is, I think, bigger than just Tigran.
Yeah, think about it. Any United States citizen who's taken like this by what's supposed to be a legitimate government. Now, we expect it from terrorists. We expect it from bad people who would hold people hostage for money, but we wouldn't expect it from a friendly government. If this is your family member, you'd be outraged. You'd be saddened. You'd be scared. And I think this is where we just continue to pray for them, reach out to our representatives, put pressure on the Nigerian government. Numbers matter. I hate to see what's happening to him, but if it was one of my family members, I'd be going crazy right now. I feel like I'm going crazy, and just because he's one of my constituents, but quite frankly, he is an American citizen, and we all need to stick together when it comes to these sort of things. And I'll tell you, Tigran is an upstanding citizen. He's never been accused of a crime in his life. He was actually an IRS investigator. This guy has done it right, and he is a great family man. So for him to be held like this is doubly outrageous.
Congressman McCormick, we commend you for the work that you're doing in keeping this at the top of the awareness on the Hill. We appreciate your efforts. We know his family does. Thank you for everything that you're doing.
One team, one fight. We won't stop until he's back. Thanks. Appreciate you guys and your efforts to make this more public.
At a time when financial crime affects not only businesses but lives, it's crucial to have tools that simplify complexity. Chainalysis provides the technology and services that help governments, financial institutions, and crypto companies trace the movement of digital assets and uncover illicit activity. Whether it's helping to ensure compliance or tracking down those who abuse the system, Chainalysis is trusted by leaders in the fight against crypto-related crime. As we confront the human toll behind these crimes, it's clear that the work to ensure transparency and justice in digital finance has never been more urgent. To learn more, visit chainalysis.com/designated. Hummingbird is a compliance platform that's reimagining what's possible from financial crime investigations. Teams using Hummingbird work more efficiently and effectively without compromising on quality. Investigators quickly get to the heart of each case with information at their fingertips and compliance-grade automation and AI to boost productivity. Designed for essential work in anti-money laundering, anti-fraud, customer due diligence, and more, Hummingbird allows you to customize the platform to your policies, giving you exactly what you need to get the job done. Hummingbird is determined to fight financial crime by empowering those on the front lines, because financial crime never stops evolving, and neither should the tools you use to stop it. Learn more at hummingbird.co. That's hummingbird.co. A few words about one of our sponsors, the Crypto Council for Innovation. The Crypto Council for Innovation is shaping global crypto policy and working with leaders in the US, EU, UK, and Asia. We collaborate directly with security professionals, law enforcement, and government leaders to keep them ahead of the rapidly changing crypto landscape. Our tailored workshops and learning programs provide national security personnel with the latest insights into what's coming next, helping them build connections with industry experts and fellow officials. Head to cryptoforinnovation.org to get in touch and join our next workshop. For several years in my work, I've been laser focused on crypto and illicit finance. I actually briefly met Tigran back in 2017 at a crypto conference in the Netherlands. It was around the same time that Tigran was in the midst of an international operation against a major darknet market called Alphabay. No one has written more about this part of Tigran's life than Andy Greenberg, an author and senior writer with Wired. In his book, Tracers in the Dark, about cryptocurrency investigations of the IRSCI, Andy focuses extensively on Tigran, the special agent. he was able to share with us why Tigran was so critical to some of the biggest crypto investigations of the past decade. I'm wondering if we should start at the beginning with you and your impression of Tigran, but maybe just set the scene. uh, Who is Tigran Gambaryan?
Well, Tigran Gambaryan truly is, I would say, the top federal agent in history by many measures when it comes to cryptocurrency criminal investigations. He pioneered cryptocurrency tracing as a law enforcement investigative technique and had a hand in, I would say, most of the biggest cryptocurrency criminal takedowns ever in law enforcement over the course of his decade-long career in federal government.
And then, so how did he come on your radar? How did you deal with him from the beginning?
Well, being the kind of like reporter focused on the dark side of the internet that I am, have been always been interested in cryptocurrency's use in crime. And I covered the Silk Road, the first dark web drug market, very closely. I think I first met Tigran in the elevator at the Silk Road trial, the trial of Ross Ulbricht, the so-called Dread Pirate Roberts, who created the Silk Road, the kingpin of that drug market. And then I was actually on a panel with him at I can't remember, some event where I was up on stage arguing that Bitcoin still seemed like if you used it in the correct way or used it carefully, you could successfully get away with crimes, and it could be anonymous or to some degree untraceable. And Tigran was the one on stage correcting me and saying, Andy, actually, I think that the cryptocurrency is surprisingly traceable, and busting this myth of cryptocurrency's privacy properties, although it would take me, almost a decade, admittedly, to realize just how right he was and how wrong I was.
So how did you come to realize that? What happened? What did you see Tigran doing in IRSCI?
Well, around 2021, I started writing a book called Tracers in the Dark, which is about really the advent of cryptocurrency tracing as a law enforcement investigative technique. How it turned out that this thing that so many people believed was untraceable and private and anonymous, Bitcoin, including myself, admittedly, turned out to be the opposite. I would say that the Bitcoin has turned out to be a trap for people seeking privacy and all sorts of criminals. And Tigran was the first person to demonstrate that. I mean, in 2014, the Silk Road had just been taken down. Tigran was actually not a major part of that takedown. He was very junior agent at the time at IRS criminal investigations, but he was sort of itching to be a part of that case and looking for an inroad into investigating the Silk Road in the wake of that takedown. And then he got a tip from a cryptocurrency exchange, Bitstamp, that someone named Karl Mark Force, who happened to be a DEA agent who had been investigating the Silk Road, was cashing out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoins of unknown origin.
Hmm.
That made Tigran suspicious, and he had never believed this myth that Bitcoin was untraceable. He looked at the blockchain, this essentially list of every Bitcoin transaction. And, although that list, the blockchain is, only shows how Bitcoins are sent from one Bitcoin address to another, he thought, I bet that I can still trace this money. I can still follow the coins from one address to the next if I know the origin and the destination. And so using the evidence collected from the Silk Road takedown, he was able to follow every jump of the coins from address to address and show that Karl Mark Force had essentially gotten all this money from the Silk Road, the very site that he was investigating as a DEA agent. He had actually, Karl Mark Force, this DEA agent, been selling law enforcement information to the Silk Road, the Dread Pirate Roberts, as a kind of mole inside the DEA. Tigran then found, amazingly, that there was a second corrupt agent, Sean Bridges, who had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Silk Road. He traced that money to and proved both of these corrupt agents' guilt. And this was remarkable in the sense that not only were there two federal agents who were corruptly enriching themselves in the Silk Road investigation, but it was the first time that anybody had submitted blockchain evidence in a criminal case and proved someone's guilt, which is what Tigran did here. And sent these two guys away for years.
So he was basically at the beginning of crypto tracing, crypto crime fighting. So how did that manifest in the years that followed?
Well, that was a kind of proof of concept case. I mean, it was really the first time it had ever been done, and it was proven without a doubt at that point that no, Bitcoin is not untraceable. In fact, you can go to prison for because of the evidence on the blockchain. But then, Tigran kind of partnered in a sort of odd couple way with Michael Groniger, who was the co-founder of Chainalysis, the startup that the world's first cryptocurrency tracing company. And using Chainalysis's technology developed by Michael Groniger, Tigran partnered with him to take on the biggest mystery in the cryptocurrency crime world of the time, which was who had stolen 650,000 bitcoins from Mt. Gox, the world's first cryptocurrency exchange. Mt. Gox had been bankrupted in this mysterious heist. And Tigran and Michael together were able to trace that stolen $500 million sum on the blockchain and show that it had flowed into this mysterious exchange called BTCE, which nobody knew who hosted, where BTC was hosted or who had created it. It turned out that BTCE had actually been created by the same thieves who had stolen this money as a means to essentially launder $500 million of stolen bitcoins. And together, Michael and Tigran not only solved that mystery, but Tigran led the takedown of BTCE, shutting down what had become this kind of hub for all sorts of cryptocurrency criminal cash outs. It had become a kind of ATM for the whole crypto crime community.
So that was a key case. What else? What else happened? Because I remember I was getting into crypto around 2016, 2017, looking at cases, and I started learning about different exchanges like BTCE. But how did Tigran sort of become the center of this sort of these types of investigations as the years went on?
Well, that was really just the beginning in some ways. I think that was the first case, as you're saying, that really got law enforcement's attention and showed that you could use this new technique of cryptocurrency tracing, what had seemed impossible a few years earlier, as a kind of investigative superweapon to take down some of the biggest cyber criminal conspiracies in the world. And soon after that, Tigran was a part of the investigation of Alphabet, which had become, in the wake of the Silk Road, the biggest dark web drug market and crime market in history, 10 times the size of the Silk Road at its peak. Cryptocurrency tracing was actually used to prove that the kingpin of Alphabet was Alexander Kaz, this French-Canadian man living in Bangkok. But it was Tigran who worked with Chainalysis to develop a kind of secret cryptocurrency tracing technique. It's kind of, it remains somewhat sensitive, but I detail it in my book through a leaked document from Chainalysis, where they were able to find the Alphabet core server in Lithuania. And that was a turning point in the case that in many ways made the Alphabet takedown possible. The biggest dark web takedown in history, still to this date by some measures.
One thing I think you're pointing to is just how global these cases were. I mean, how did these cases become more of an sort of international affair with different agencies around the world collaborating, and how was Tigran involved?
Well, I mean, maybe the most global of all of these, and in some ways, the peak of Tigran's career in terms of these cryptocurrency tracing cases at IRSCI was the Welcome to Video case. And this was, an even kind of darker layer of the dark web than drug and cybercrime markets like Alphabet. This was a child sexual abuse video market where these truly horrific videos were being sold for cryptocurrency on the dark web. And Tigran actually had a breakthrough in that case that had nothing to do with cryptocurrency. He was the one who found, in fact, that Welcome to Video was leaking the IP addresses due to a kind of screw up in how it was using the Tor anonymity software. And he could show, in fact, through that the Welcome to Video server was in Korea. But then, to his credit and to his fellow agents' credit at IRSCI, they weren't content to just go take down that server. They instead traced every transaction that they could in this giant network of child exploitation to identify more than 300 uploaders and downloaders and hands-on abusers of children around the world. I mean, truly in dozens of countries around the world, speaking to your point of the global nature of this, and to pass out these intelligence packets to local law enforcement in all of those countries and arrest these hundreds and hundreds of men who were sometimes, involved in hands-on exploitation of children. 23 kids were rescued in that operation. I mean, truly, there is nothing that compares to it, in my knowledge, in terms of human impact from these cryptocurrency tracing investigations. And Tigran played a giant role in that one, too.
So I mean, you're basically describing, Tigran as someone who is really at the, the top, great reputation at the top of, I don't want to say top of his game, right? But someone who was very well respected. Obviously, we're thinking about where he is now. What was the transition? I mean, how did Tigran go from IRSCI to, to Nigeria?
It's a crazy development, but there's a reason that Tigran is the protagonist of my book, and that is that he was the agent at the center of so many of these cases. I think he became a kind of legendary figure, if that's not overstating it, within this crypto crime investigation world. He somehow just had a hand in every major case. And I think that's really fair to say. So, just as I was finishing my book, Tigran tells me he's retiring from IRSCI and going to work at Binance. Which of course is like a a surprising development to say the least. I mean, Binance did not at the time and does not have a great reputation. I mean, maybe that's changed to some degree, but Binance, of course, we all know now has been involved in, been pleaded guilty essentially to massive amounts of criminal use of cryptocurrency and money laundering, and was fined, $4.5 billion or so by the U.S. federal government. But Tigran, I do really believe, was recruited to Binance in their attempt to kind of clean up and go straight. I mean, Binance had become the biggest cryptocurrency exchange in the world. They no longer needed, I would say, like to be involved in criminal activity to bolster their profits or to turn a blind eye to it, to put it, generously. Um,
Sorry to interrupt, but just for the timeline, right? So when was he being recruited in terms of Binance's, you know, um, livelihood?
I believe this would have been late 2021 into
Mm.
early 2022 that Tigran was making this big transition. I mean, some might say going to the dark side, but I do believe that he was being recruited, and he's a principled enough guy in my reporting that I believe he thought, and probably truly was, doing the work at Binance of helping them to go legit, to clean up this a rather dirty operation. And it
Mm.
was his job at Binance to, in fact, he helped to recruit many of the other best and most talented, most historied uh, cryptocurrency tracing investigators in my book. Many of them went to Binance and worked for him. They had kind of an incredible all-star team, and their job, I really do believe, was to help Binance go straight, essentially, like to become a more legitimate, more law-abiding, and cooperative with law enforcement's cryptocurrency exchange.
Hmm. And so he's at Binance. He is, he's set up their investigations, their compliance, and all of that. From what you know, how does he end up in Nigeria being detained?
Right. I mean, this is still just so mind-blowing to me. But um, Nigeria, essentially, it seems to me, after Binance settled with the U.S. federal government and paid this, billions of dollars in fines, Nigeria essentially has said, "Well, what about us? You still owe us. Like, you haven't settled up with us. Like, you
It's our
are
turn.
exactly you are responsible for tax evasion and money laundering that involves our country as well." They also, I think, separately have blamed cryptocurrency and several cryptocurrency exchanges, including Binance, for the devaluation of their own currency, which is, I'm not enough of an economist to know who's to blame there, but I don't believe that it's Binance's responsibility alone to protect the value of the naira, the Nigerian national currency. But I think it's fair to say there was some scapegoating here, and Nigeria essentially summons or invited Binance to come negotiate some sort of settlement, is my understanding. Tigran was invited by the Nigerian government, and this was his job in many cases, to be the emissary to governments and law enforcement on Binance's behalf, to come to Nigeria to work this out. And then I think there were, in fact, two trips. On the first trip, the reporting is that there was a solicitation of a bribe, which Binance declined to pay.
Hmm.
Then, kind of amazingly, I mean, I think this kind of speaks to Tigran's sort of bold or even maybe foolhardy courage as an individual. He returned to Nigeria on another trip, and on that second trip, just days into the negotiations, he was essentially told, "You're leaving your hotel. You're now going into this guest house where you will be a guest of the Nigerian government in detention." His passport was taken from him, and he was essentially held as illegally as a prisoner, or you could say a hostage.
Tigran's case is, in the crypto space and in the law enforcement space, very well known. But I think some of us would say that it's not getting a whole lot of attention in the media, or at least not enough attention. Why do you think that is?
Well, in some ways it's a complicated story. Like, how did this federal agent end up working for Binance? How is it that this storied crypto investigator, this kind of hero of cryptocurrency tracing as a law enforcement investigative technique, how did he end up working for essentially a money laundering, culprit in Binance? But I think in some ways it's a simpler story. Like, somehow this former U.S. federal agent and U.S. citizen is being held in Nigeria, by the way, no longer in a guest house, now in jail, being charged, with crimes that are really entirely the behavior of his employer, not himself. And I would argue that he is being held as a hostage, as leverage to make Binance pay, or to find a scapegoat for Nigeria's own inability to manage its national currency. Regardless, I think it is a relatively simple story that this American former federal agent and citizen is being held illegally in Nigeria for crimes that he did not commit, and deserves to come home, deserves the attention of the US State Department, the White House, anybody who can provide leverage to get him free.
I don't know, this might be a little bit sensitive. I don't want to get too political here in terms of international geopolitics, or maybe I do. We're taping this, we're talking to others. What should be the message to the Nigerian government, just from your perspective?
I, as a journalist, am going to continue to cover this story. I've not forgotten about Tigran in jail, and I'm going to cover his case. I'm going to cover what appears to be a criminal trial in which he's being tried for things that he did not do personally, and that the Nigerian government is holding a U.S. citizen and former federal agent with an incredible service record, essentially illegally, from what I can tell. And I don't believe that as this case gets more scrutiny from me and others in the global media, that this will work out for the Nigerian government. I actually believe, and I'm trying to remain objective as a journalist here, that Nigeria is going to lose more than it gains from this gambit of essentially holding an American hostage. And I hope that Nigerian officials are starting to realize that now, that this is not going to work out for them. And that, I would argue, I'm not really in a position to give them advice, but perhaps cut your losses and let Tigran go home before this becomes even more of an embarrassment and a point of shame for Nigeria.
As part of this show, I reached out to the Nigerian government. I asked the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the Nigerian law enforcement agency that arrested Tigran, to appear undesignated and tell their side of the story. We did not get a reply. We should also note that the New York Times has reported that on his first trip to Nigeria, Tigran was told that Binance would have to pay $150 million to the Nigerian government in order to make their troubles in Nigeria go away. Tigran reportedly saw this as a request for a bribe and reported it to Binance. This may explain why Nigerian officials are not so ready to talk to us. So join us next time for part 2, where I'll speak with Tigran's former colleagues and a top executive at Binance to learn more about their efforts to bring Tigran home. I'm Yaya Jata Fanusie. This is Designated on the Illicit Edge Network.